Hey, this is Jack, and I invested in Palantir the day it went on the stock market. I invested with 20,000 and turned it into 200,000 over the past 5 years now. And I just want to tell you why I invested day one, and will continue to invest for many decades. So I invested in Palantir in 2021 when it direct listed into the stock market. I think that was the first time I heard about a direct listing, as I only knew about IPOs, and at the time that they were popping SPACs, but direct listed never heard. So I found out they were going to direct list, hopped on the very first day, very first minute they went up, and I've been with them since. Um, so I knew about Palantir in 2016 when I just entered college. I had 4 years of programming experience in my bag, and so I was ahead of the curve in terms of my peer group. And so while people were trying to look for what they wanted to do, how they felt about certain majors and whatnot, I was dead set on becoming a software engineer. And so I spent that time really looking at what it'd be like to be working at a big technology company like Google, Facebook, etc., and how to get in those companies and where to go. And what I found at the time was that the people I was following, they were part of the Silicon Valley circles, and the one thing they kept mentioning was this company called Palantir. So I didn't know what Palantir was, but seeing Palantir was literally the hottest company to work at in Silicon Valley by 2016. And Palantir at the time had no presence outside uh, DLD, and they had no means of really understanding what the hell they do. So they were just this vague, shady seeming company, but you just had engineers lining up, engineers from all the best schools lining up to go to this one company, and I didn't understand, especially me, because I heard it was a Silicon Valley company, cool. Then I heard it was a defense company contractor. I was like, wait, what? Just because I am from the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia, and so that whole area is just it's only defense. It's only defense and government work, and so I knew the type of people that went into these companies, and I also grew up with those super bright people that did go to those top schools like Berkeley and etc., Princeton, Ivy Leagues, and whatnot. And I know their hopes and dreams. I grew up with them. I knew what they wanted to do with life, where they wanted to go right after college, and etc. etc. So I understand the psychology of these people who are at that top level of talent and capability. And one thing I definitely knew was that no one wanted to stay in DC or wanted to work at for the government or defense for that matter. So to hear that you had these people from MIT, Stanford, Harvard line up for a defense contractor, that got me thinking. It really kept my wheels turning because that just made no sense at all. But I continued digging up on them. But alas, first time I heard about it, you couldn't make sense of what the hell they were doing. But the years came by. I was able to dig more research about what they were doing, um, how they were helping the defense, DoD, and I had some idea just because now I had friends and family now been working with this technology, so we had some idea, but you could say this technology at the time didn't seem insanely incredible, to be honest. Pretty standard, but that's only if you think of it as an isolated thing. If you compare it and contrast it with what they currently use, then that's a different story, and we can go further on in this video about that. But that's just something to be warned of because it didn't seem super incredible. But if you get further down the rabbit hole and you understand, if you worked in this field, which I have like top secret clearance, and you have friends and family or whatnot that have experienced working in this field, um, you can see that this is pretty big. But alas, still wanted to understand what the hell this company really did for the most part, as it still can be very vague, especially when they have multiple product lines and you're just trying to grasp just what one of them does. But eventually, I found one of the biggest things to come out from finding Palantir was leadership. So, for people who don't know, one of the founders, the main backers in the earlier stages was Peter Thiel. If you do not know who Peter Thiel, long story short, he is the one of the most accomplished people to come out of Silicon Valley. He was partners with Elon during the PayPal days, co-founder after they did a merger, and since then he's just been crushing it. So Theo, I found out through mainly my startup entrepreneurship days, um, and of course I read Zero to One. So reading that, very passionate or even I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to say even an advocate of it. And after applying his principle or change my mindset to understand the principles that he laid out in Zero to One, it was definitely 100% valuable to my previous startup experience, of which allowed us to find part market fit to grow those startups into very rapidly growing companies that allowed us to get big investors. Um, so when it comes to understanding where the puck is going, Thiel is good. Thiel is very good. Short resume for people who still don't know. Uh, Early founder with Elon on PayPal, then this Palantir, and also early investor Facebook, of which he owned 10%. And then his foundation, other than his founders fund, that they invested in many of the big companies that you know and will continue to know in the future as more come up from him. But um, it's through Theo I really understood that this is why people are willing to give their all. This is why the best and the brightest in the country are willing to give their best years to this company, to a defense contractor. The best and brightest in the US are willing to give it. Instead of Facebook, instead of Amazon, instead of Google, Apple, Netflix, whatever, or even the next hottest thing at the time, Airbnb, DoorDash, etc. It was Palantir. So to say, how could these incredible, hardworking, accomplished, talented, high IQ people be giving up their opportunities to pursue the next app, the next really big thing for Palantir, a defense contractor? But I understood it was that the way people are doing with Elon is what people were doing with Thiel, or at least with software engineering, at least, where they believe that being part of this company would push them into an ecosystem that will this that that would consistently push innovation, and they were very accomplished, and they had a great track. They had not a great, they had an excellent track record of producing the next biggest thing. So people believe by joining this type of group, they could be part of that greatness. And so it was that got me turning into thinking about looking into Palantir, of which I applied. Didn't get accepted. Went through the rounds. Didn't go through, but it was a good interview process. Uh, Fairly typical, maybe. Yeah, it was fairly typical of software engineering intern. But that was the thing. I understood why people were willing to stake their best years, best and brightest were willing to bet their best years on this company. So when I saw that, it was like, if a defense contractor can get that type of talent, regardless of what they do, that is just a winning situation. Because I'm from the East Coast, I'm from the DMV, too. I know the type of people that go into defense contractors, and I know they're not the quality like typically are savants coming out of Stanford, of MIT, Carnegie, Harvard, etc. So if you could just even be able to get them to willingly go into a defense contractor, then this defense contractor has so much more immense advantage against any defense contractor in terms of just raw talent. They had essentially solved the hiring issue with defense, where people would typically go for software engineers as a last ditch effort if they couldn't get into the companies they wanted, or just a way to coast for their life, to be honest, really. Um, but they had solved that issue, so I had to spend more time, whether it would be trying to work there or potentially invest. And so when I understood why, the big why as to why people kept going, then spent more and more time trying to understand the tech till I could really make sense of what it does and the implications it has in its own ecosystem, in its niche, and where it can go from there. But after I understood that, I realized that a realistic expectation back in 2020, when I heard about the direct listing, was that the current price I saw was very fair value to what at least it could realistically hit in 10 years, which I was expecting an evaluation similar to at least one of the biggest defense contractors, whether it be Raytheon or Northman at the time. So I know that it could realistically achieve that after I understood its Palantir's businesses, and then where they continue to position themselves in the defense market. As if you understand defense, you realize that a lot of them just simply do physical defense, and they do IT operations and whatnot. I've been a part of those ones over the years, and this was just leagues better. It's just leagues better. I can give you a comment case as working in defense on these type of projects. Something that Palantir will eventually be used in those projects in the future. Um, is that you have things like something like an off-the-shelf enterprise API manager or something like that, WSO2 or MuleSoft. If you could only see the things we did on a day-to-day basis, you thought this was like a code monkey. They're so basic, and you see how these contracts are laid out. And I was like, all this for the software and the personnel and the maintenance, and then year by year, how they just keep wrapping up bills, more and more bills for whatever the fuck they wanted. Palantir is just leagues better in terms of value you could give to the client, which is either the government or the military. But yeah, you could have something that's ready and used that is just off the shelf, easy to use for a developer in defense or for the government. And the developer doesn't even have to be good, to be honest with you. Like, doesn't have to be good. He just needs a clearance. And they can produce some value. You could say it's very marginal, but in their terms, it's still highly valuable, as the value is that you actually have someone who can connect the dots in between softwares, who's qualified to do it. I mean, has a clearance, so they can even do the job in the first place. So that's the most important thing. So when you have something like Palantir, where you hotwire it in, and I was like, this produces way more. Because even on the products we were on, we were just trying to understand how AI would supersede this and how it pump the system into a much souped up version that would provide more value to the customer. And I was like, Palantir does it from the get go. It really does. You wouldn't have to need any other additional stuff. It's just part of the system. But I understood the big why, which was primarily leadership. I think that's the biggest reason why people even decided. Because at the time, people didn't even know what the hell Palantir does. It was just some vague, shady company coming from Silicon Valley, and yet you had the best and brightest of the United States coming in droves to work at this company. But leadership was the biggest thing, and then you find out more about this, and then you can just basically listen to whoever Kool-Aid they sell you, and I guess you will believe it depending on how much you're interested in it. But from then on, I invested day one on it. It's just been a wild ride since then, and I still believe it will continue to be a wild ride. I believe that Palantir is in the same situation as Amazon in the .com, and I truly believe Palantir will be the next $1 trillion company, and I potentially it could be the next multi-trillion-dollar company, but that's many years down the line. So, signing off, Jack. Just getting this ball rolling, and we'll just see what works. Bye.